Captain Jake Morrison stood in the massive chamber of Nexus Prime, feeling very small. The space station was huge, built by aliens who thought bigger was always better. The ceiling stretched so high he could barely see it. Around him sat representatives from dozens of different species, each one looking down at the single human who dared to speak before the Galactic Council. Morrison wore his best uniform, the dark blue fabric, crisp and clean. His hair was cut short in military style, and his face showed the confidence that came from 20 years of service. But even he felt nervous as hundreds of alien eyes stared at him. The chamber buzzed with different languages. Some aliens clicked and chirped, others made low humming sounds. A few spoken voices so deep they made the floor vibrate. Morrison had learned to use the universal translator, but he still felt lost in the noise. Admiral Zektar of the Carillion Empire sat on the highest platform. His species looked like giant lizards that walked on two legs. Their scales were dark green, and their eyes glowed yellow in the dim light. The Carillions had ruled most of the galaxy for over 1,000 years. When Zektar spoke, everyone listened. "We face a great threat," Zektar announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The Devourers have consumed 3 star systems in the Outer Rim. They eat everything in their path, planets, ships, even the stars themselves. We must stop them before they reach the core worlds." Morrison knew about the Devourers. Earth had received reports about the strange bioships that worked together like a hive of insects. No one knew where they came from, but they destroyed everything they touched. The reports were scary enough to make even brave soldiers nervous. "Each of our great empires will contribute to the defense fleet," Zektar continued. "The Carillion Navy will send 2,000 warships. The Crystal Confederation offers 800 vessels. The Machine Collective will provide 1,500 units. One by one, the alien representatives stood and announced their contributions. The numbers were huge. Some empires offered thousands of ships. Others brought specialized weapons or technology. The total fleet would number over 50,000 vessels, the largest force ever assembled in galactic history. Finally, Zektar's yellow eyes found Morrison. "And what does humanity offer to this grand alliance?" Morrison stood up slowly. He was tall for a human, but still shorter than most of the aliens around him. He cleared his throat and spoke clearly into his translator device. "Earth will contribute 1 ship to the defense fleet." The chamber fell silent for a moment. Then the laughter started. It began as quiet chuckles from a few aliens, but quickly grew louder. Soon hundreds of different species were making their versions of laughter. Some roared, others squeaked, and a few made sounds like breaking glass. Zektar raised one clawed hand and the noise stopped. But Morrison could see the amusement in the Admiral's glowing eyes. "1 ship?" Zektar asked. "Did our translators make an error? Surely you mean 1,000 ships, or at least 100. "No, sir," Morrison replied, keeping his voice steady. 1 ship. The Defiant. More laughter filled the chamber. A blue-skinned alien with 6 arms stood up. "We have heard of human ships," she said in a voice like singing. "They are small and slow. Our scouts report that humans barely learn to leave their home planet. What could one primitive vessel do against the Devourers?" Morrison had expected this reaction. Earth was new to galactic politics. Humans had only made first contact with alien species 50 years ago, while other civilizations had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. Humanity was still learning how to build proper spaceships. "Our ship carries specialized human technology," Morrison said. "Our crew has training that might surprise you." This brought even more laughter. A creature that looked like a walking tree made a sound like wind through leaves. "Human technology?" it said in a voice like creaking wood. "We have seen your weapons. Simple chemical rockets and metal bullets. We use energy beams that can cut through mountains." Zektar leaned forward on his platform. "Tell me, human, how many crew members serve on this mighty vessel of yours?" 60, sir." 60, Zektar repeated slowly. "Our smallest patrol boats carry more warriors than that. Our flagship houses 10,000 crew members. What can 60 humans possibly accomplish?" Morrison looked around the chamber. Every alien face showed the same expression. They thought he was either crazy or stupid. Maybe both. But he had his orders from Earth Command. Humanity would prove itself, no matter what these aliens thought. "With respect, Admiral Zektar, humans have always done more with less. We believe in quality over quantity." "Quality." Zektar said the word like it tasted bad. "Very well. Since humanity wishes to participate in this noble cause, we shall permit it. Your single ship may join our great fleet." The Admiral's tone made it clear this was charity, not respect. Morrison could hear the insult hidden in the polite words. However, Zektar continued, your vessel will be assigned to the rear guard position. When the real fighting begins, you will stay safely behind our battle lines. We would not want to explain to Earth why their only ship was destroyed in the first moments of combat. More laughter rippled through the chamber. Morrison felt his face get hot, but he kept his expression calm. He had dealt with bullies before, both human and alien. The best response was always to let actions speak louder than words. Thank you for the opportunity to serve, and Morrison said with a slight bow. You won't regret this decision. As he turned to leave, Morrison heard Zektar speaking to another admiral in a voice he wasn't supposed to hear. Post their little ship far from the battle. When they see the Devourers coming, the humans will flee like all cowards do. At least this way we can tell their planet we tried to include them. Morrison walked out of the chamber with his head held high. Behind him, the aliens continued discussing their grand strategy. They talked about massive fleets and powerful weapons, about glory and honor in the coming battle. None of them bothered to ask what made human technology special. None of them wondered why Earth would send only one ship unless that ship could do something amazing. They saw the small numbers and assumed humans were weak. Morrison smiled as he headed back to his shuttle. They would learn soon enough that sometimes the smallest package contained the biggest surprise. The Defiant was on its way, and Captain Lisa Parker was eager to show the galaxy what humans could really do. The laughter would stop soon enough. The massive galactic fleet hung in space like a city of stars. Over 3,000 ships spread across the darkness, each one bigger than anything Earth had ever built. The alien vessels came in every shape imaginable. Some looked like giant crystals. Others resembled sea creatures made of metal. The largest ships stretched for miles, their hulls glowing with energy shields and weapon systems. Captain Lisa Parker stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the alien fleet through her ship's main screen. Her vessel looked tiny compared to the others, no bigger than a lifeguard boat next to a fleet of aircraft carriers. But Parker felt proud of her ship and crew. Parker was 35 years old with short brown hair and sharp green eyes. She had served in Earth's Space Navy since she was 18, working her way up from a junior officer to ship captain. The Defiant was her first command, and she planned to make it count. Captain, said Commander Troy Bennett from his position at the tactical station. Admiral Zektar is broadcasting fleet orders. Parker nodded. Put it on the main screen. The huge lizard-like alien appeared on their display, his yellow eyes glowing with confidence. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship buzzed with activity as hundreds of alien crew members prepared for battle. Warriors of the galaxy, Zektar announced. Today we face the greatest threat our civilizations have ever known. The Devourers approach this system, and we shall stop them here. Our combined fleets represent the finest military might in known space. Parker looked around her small bridge. Her crew numbered only 12 people, all of them young and eager. They wore simple gray uniforms and worked at stations that looked basic compared to the glowing alien technology she had seen. The enemy will arrive in the Kepler system within hours. Zektar continued. All ships will maintain formation and follow standard engagement protocols. Energy weapons will target their bioships while our fighters provide support. The transmission ended, and Parker turned to her crew. You heard the Admiral. Troy, what's our position in this formation? Bennett checked his readings. We're assigned to grid 77 Alpha, ma'am. That puts us about 50 miles behind the main battle line. 50 miles behind, Parker repeated. They really don't want us in the fight, do they? No, ma'am, said Lieutenant Kelly Nash from the weapons station. But our kinetic guns have a range of 200 miles. We can still reach the enemy from here. Parker smiled. The aliens didn't know about human weapons technology. While they used energy beams and plasma bolts, humans had perfected something much simpler. Metal slugs fired at incredible speeds. The idea seemed primitive to advanced aliens, but Parker knew better. Captain, called Navigator Sam Torres from his station near the front of the bridge. I'm picking up energy readings at the edge of the system. Something big is coming out of hyperspace. The main screen switched to long-range sensors. At first, Parker saw nothing but empty space and distant stars. Then the darkness began to change. Small dots appeared, growing larger as they approached. But these weren't ships in any normal sense. Dear God, whispered Dr. Maya Foster, the ship's science officer. Look at the size of that formation. The Devourers emerged from hyperspace like a living nightmare. Their ships looked organic, grown rather than built. The smallest ones resembled giant insects with transparent wings and multiple eyes. The larger vessels looked like sea creatures, jellyfish and squids made of dark purple flesh that pulsed with inner light. But it was their numbers that made Parker's heart skip. Thousands upon thousands of bioships filled the darkness, moving together with perfect coordination. They flowed through space like a school of fish, each one responding to signals that human sensors couldn't detect. Fleet command to all vessels. Zektar's voice crackled over the radio. Enemy contact confirmed. All ships prepare for battle. Maintain formation and engage on my command. The alien fleet began to move. The huge warships turned toward the approaching enemy, their weapons powering up with bright flashes of light. Energy shields shimmered around each vessel like soap bubbles made of electricity. Parker watched as the first alien fighters launched from their carrier ships. Thousands of small craft streaked toward the devourers, their engines leaving trails of blue fire across the darkness. The sight was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. First contact in 30 seconds, Bennett reported. The battle began with a light show that put any fireworks display to shame. Alien ships opened fire with energy weapons that painted the darkness in every color imaginable. Bright beams of red, blue, and green light stabbed out at the Devourer formation. Some beams hit their targets, causing the bioships to flare with orange fire. But Parker quickly noticed something wrong. The energy weapons that struck Devourer ships seemed to have less effect with each hit. The organic hulls were changing, adapting to the alien weapons in real time. "Troy, are you seeing this?" Parker asked. "Yes, ma'am. The Devourer ships are modifying their bioarmor to resist energy weapons. Each hit does less damage than the last one." On the main screen, Parker watched alien fighters explode as Devourer bioships fired back with organic projectiles that seemed to track their targets. The beautiful light show was turning into a massacre. "Captain," Foster called out, her voice tight with worry. "I'm reading massive energy spikes from the larger Devourer vessels. They're preparing some kind of coordinated attack." The biggest bioships at the center of the enemy formation began to glow with sickly green light. Then they fired together, sending waves of energy that washed over the alien fleet like a tide. Where the energy touched alien ships, their shields flickered and died. Without their protective shields, the alien vessels became sitting ducks. Devourer fighters swarmed over them like insects, tearing into their hulls with claws and acid. Parker watched in horror as several massive alien warships broke apart under the assault. "Fleet command to all vessels." Zektar's voice sounded strained now. "Fall back to secondary positions. Repeat, all ships fall back." The organized alien formation began to crumble. Ships that had looked invincible minutes before now fled from the advancing Devourers. Some vessels didn't make it, disappearing in bursts of flame and twisted metal. "Captain," Bennett said quietly, "Admiral Zektar is ordering a general retreat. All ships are supposed to withdraw to the outer system." Parker looked at her small crew. They had trained for this moment for months, studying Devourer tactics and preparing their ship for battle. While the alien fleet ran away, the Defiant sat alone in space, too small for the enemy to notice. "Ma'am?" Torres asked. "Should I set course for the retreat coordinates?" Parker studied the tactical display. The Devourers were pursuing the alien fleet, but not very quickly. They seemed more interested in examining the disabled ships they had captured. It was like they were learning from each victory, getting stronger with every battle. "No," Parker said finally. "Set course for the enemy formation." Her bridge crew stared at her in shock. "Captain?" Bennett asked. "Did you say toward the enemy?" "You heard me. Full speed ahead. It's time to show these aliens what one human ship can do." Torres's hands moved over his controls, and the Defiant turned away from the retreating fleet. The small human ship accelerated toward the massive enemy formation, alone against impossible odds. Behind them, the alien fleet continued its retreat, leaving the tiny human vessel to face the Devourers by itself. The bridge of the Defiant was quiet except for the hum of computers and the steady breathing of the crew. Captain Parker stood in the center, watching the massive enemy formation grow larger on the main screen. The Devourer ships moved like a living cloud, their organic hulls pulsing with strange lights. "Distance to target 200 miles and closing," reported Navigator Torres. His voice was steady, but Parker could see sweat on his forehead. "All stop," Parker ordered. "This is our engagement range." The Defiant slowed to a halt, hanging in empty space between the retreating alien fleet and the advancing Devourers. Parker looked around at her crew. These were good people, all volunteers who knew they might not survive the next hour. Chief Engineer Cole, report, Parker said into her communication device. The voice of Ryan Cole came through the speakers from the engine room. Fusion reactor running at 100%, Captain. All systems are green. The experimental ramjet drive is ready if you need it. Parker nodded. The ramjet drive was Earth's newest technology, still being tested. It could push the Defiant to speeds that would crush most alien crews. But humans were tougher than they looked. Weapons Officer Nash. Status report. Lieutenant Kelly Nash looked up from her station, her blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. All kinetic weapons loaded and ready, Captain. We have 200 tungsten slugs in the main battery, plus 500 smaller rounds for point defense. Dr. Foster, what can you tell me about those bioships? Maya Foster studied her science readings. Her dark eyes focused on the data scrolling across her screen. The Devourer vessels are definitely organic, Captain. Their hulls seem to be made of some kind of living tissue that can adapt to different types of damage. But I'm not seeing any metal or traditional armor. Parker smiled. The aliens had tried to fight the Devourers with energy weapons, but their bio-armor adapted to energy. Nobody in the galaxy used kinetic weapons anymore. They thought metal bullets were too primitive for space combat. How primitive are we feeling today, people? Parker asked her crew. Commander Bennett grinned from his tactical station. Very primitive, Captain. Good, Nash, prepare to fire a full spread. Target the closest bioships. Nash's fingers danced over her controls. Targeting solutions locked in. Ready to fire on your command. Parker took a deep breath. Fire. The Defiant shook slightly as its kinetic weapons launched. Unlike the bright energy beams used by alien ships, the human weapons were almost invisible. Tungsten slugs the size of baseball bats shot through space at incredible speeds, moving too fast for most sensors to track. The first volley hit 3 Devourer bioships at the edge of their formation. The results were spectacular. The organic vessels had adapted their bio-armor to resist energy weapons, but they had no defense against simple metal traveling at 20% of light speed. The tungsten slugs punched through the bioships like bullets through paper. The first ship simply exploded, its organic hull unable to contain the massive kinetic energy. The second ship broke in half, its 2 pieces tumbling away into space. The third vessel tried to seal the holes, but more slugs arrived before its healing could finish. Direct hits on all targets, Nash reported, excitement in her voice. Enemy vessels destroyed. On the main screen, Parker watched the Devourer formation react to this new threat. The bioships that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly seemed confused. They had never encountered weapons that couldn't be adapted to. Captain, Bennett called out. The enemy is changing course. They're coming for us. Let them come, Parker replied. Torres evasive maneuvers. Cole, give me everything the engines have. The Defiant began to move like no other ship in the galaxy. While alien vessels were built for comfort and smooth flight, human ships were designed by a species that had learned to fly in the gravity well of a heavy planet. The Defiant twisted and turned through space, pulling acceleration forces that would have killed most alien crews. Parker felt the acceleration push her back into her chair. Her body, evolved on a world with higher gravity than most alien planets, handled the stress easily. Around her, the human crew continued to work at their stations even as the ship pulled maneuvers that defied belief. Incoming fire, Bennett warned. The Devourers were shooting back now, firing organic projectiles that tracked their targets through space. But their weapons were designed to hit the large, slow-moving alien ships they had fought before. The small, fast-moving human vessel dodged between their shots like a dancer avoiding raindrops. Return fire, Parker ordered. Nash launched another volley of kinetic rounds. More Devourer ships exploded as tungsten slugs tore through their bio-armor. The enemy formation began to spread out, trying to surround the single human ship. Captain, Foster called out urgently, I'm detecting some kind of quantum communication between the enemy ships. They're using entangled particles to coordinate their attacks. Can you jam it? Parker asked. Maybe, but I'd need to get closer to their command ship, that big one in the center of their formation. Parker looked at the tactical display. The largest Devourer vessel sat in the middle of the enemy fleet, surrounded by hundreds of smaller bioships. It was easily 10 times the size of the Defiant and covered in what looked like defensive weapons. How close? Parker asked. Within 50 miles. I'd need to deploy a quantum disruption device manually. Manually means someone has to go over there. Yes, ma'am. Parker considered the options. The alien fleet was retreating, leaving the Defiant alone against thousands of enemy ships. But if Foster was right about the quantum communication, cutting it off might disable the entire Devourer force. "Cole," Parker called to the engine room. "Can the ramjet drive get us through their formation?" "It'll be rough, Captain. We'll need to go faster than any ship has ever flown before. The acceleration might knock us unconscious. Better unconscious than dead. Prepare for ramjet ignition." Parker turned to her crew. "Listen up, people. We're going to punch through their lines and hit their command ship. This is going to be the roughest ride any of us has ever taken. Strap in and hold on." The crew quickly secured themselves in their acceleration harnesses. Parker did the same, feeling the familiar weight of the safety straps across her chest. "Cole, light it up." The ramjet drive activated with a sound like thunder. The Defiant shot forward so fast that space itself seemed to blur around them. The acceleration pressed Parker deep into her seat, making it hard to breathe. But she had trained for this, and so had her crew. The Devourer ships tried to intercept them, but the human vessel moved too fast to track. Organic projectiles fired at where the Defiant had been, missing by miles. The bioships attempted to block their path, but the small human ship slipped between them like a needle through cloth. "Approaching the command ship?" Torres gasped, fighting against the acceleration. "Cut the ramjet," Parker ordered. The terrible pressure eased as the Defiant slowed to normal speed. They were now in the heart of the enemy formation, surrounded by bioships on all sides. The massive command vessel loomed ahead of them, its organic hull covered in pulsing lights and weapon ports. "Nash, clear us a path," Parker said. The weapons officer fired a continuous stream of kinetic rounds, punching holes in any bioship that tried to get close. The Devourers had never faced anything like this before, and their adapted defenses were useless against simple metal traveling at impossible speeds. "Foster, can you deploy your device?" Parker asked. The science officer studied her readings. "I need to get onto that command ship, Captain. The disruption device has to be placed inside their quantum communication array." Parker looked at the massive enemy vessel. Its hull was covered in what looked like weapon ports and defensive systems. Landing on it would be like walking into a nest of angry wasps. "All right, people," Parker said. "We're going to board that ship. Foster, grab your device and a security team. The rest of us will keep the Defiant running in case we need to leave in a hurry." As the crew prepared for the most dangerous mission any human had ever attempted, the alien fleet continued its retreat in the distance. They had given up the fight, leaving one small human ship to face an enemy that had consumed star systems. But Parker wasn't worried. Humans had always been good at doing impossible things. The shuttle bay of the Defiant buzzed with activity as the boarding party prepared for their mission. Dr. Foster checked her quantum disruption device one more time, making sure all the connections were secure. The device looked simple, just a metal box covered in blinking lights, but it represented years of human research into quantum mechanics. Security Chief Brad Holmes stood nearby, checking the weapons and armor for his team. Holmes was a big man with short black hair and scars on his hands from years of combat training. He had served in Earth's military before joining the Space Navy, and he knew how to fight in places where most people couldn't survive. "Remember," Holmes told his team of 6 security officers, "we don't know what we'll find inside that bioship. Stay together, watch each other's backs, and don't touch anything that looks alive unless you have to." Captain Parker watched from the shuttle bay entrance. She wanted to go with them, but her place was on the bridge. If the boarding party failed, she needed to be ready to get the Defiant out of danger. "Foster," Parker called, "how long do you need to install that device?" 5 minutes if everything goes right," Foster replied. "Maybe 10 if we run into problems." "You'll have problems," Holmes said grimly. "Ships like this don't leave their most important systems unguarded." On the main screen, they could see the massive Devourer command ship. Its hull pulsed with organic lights, and weapon ports opened and closed like breathing mouths. The bioship was easily a mile long, its surface covered in growths that looked like coral reefs made of dark purple flesh. "Captain," Commander Bennett's voice came through the communication system, "we're getting close to their hull. I'm seeing what looks like docking ports, but they're not like anything in our databases." Parker nodded. "Put us down wherever you can, Troy. Foster, your team ready?" "Yes, ma'am," Foster said, shouldering her pack. The quantum device was heavy, but she had trained to carry it in full gear. The Defiant shook as enemy fire struck their shields. The bioships surrounding them were trying to destroy the human vessel, but Nash kept them at bay with continuous kinetic fire. Every few seconds, another Devourer ship exploded as tungsten slugs tore through its hull. Making contact with enemy hull, Torres reported. Setting down now. The shuttle bay opened with a hiss of escaping air. The boarding party wore full spacesuits with armored plates over the most important parts. Their helmets had built-in communications and targeting systems, giving them advantages that the galaxy had never seen. Holmes led the way onto the bioship's hull. The surface felt spongy under his boots, like walking on living flesh, which Foster had explained was exactly what they were doing. The entire ship was grown rather than built, a massive organism that served as both vessel and weapon. Finding an entry point, Holmes reported. There's something that looks like an airlock about 50 yards ahead. The team moved carefully across the bioship's surface. The hull pulsed beneath their feet, and they could see lights moving under the skin like blood vessels carrying electricity instead of blood. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The airlock was unlike anything they had trained for. Instead of metal doors, it was a circular opening surrounded by what looked like teeth. As they approached, the teeth began to move, opening to reveal a tunnel that led into the ship's interior. "Well, that's not creepy at all," muttered Officer Kate Miller, one of Holmes's team. "Stay alert," Holmes warned. "Foster, stay in the middle of the group. If something happens to you, this whole mission is pointless." They entered the bioship through the mouth-like opening. Inside, the corridors were just as organic as the exterior. The walls curved and twisted like the inside of a seashell, and bioluminescent strips provided dim blue-green lighting. Foster checked her scanner. The quantum communication array should be toward the center of the ship. "We need to go deeper." They moved through corridors that felt alive. The floor was soft and warm, and the walls occasionally pulsed like a heartbeat. Strange sounds echoed from deeper in the ship, clicks and whistles that might have been communication between different parts of the organism. "Captain," Holmes radioed back to the Defiant. "We're inside the enemy ship. No resistance so far, but this place feels like the inside of a stomach." Parker's voice crackled through their helmets. "Understood. Nash is keeping the other bioships busy, but we can't hold them off forever. Move fast." They reached a junction where the corridor split into 3 passages. Foster checked her scanner again. "That way," she pointed to the center passage. "The quantum array is definitely in that direction." As they moved deeper into the bioship, the atmosphere began to change. The walls became thicker and more complex, covered in growths that looked like organic computers. Lights pulsed through transparent tubes carrying information from one part of the ship to another. "We're getting close," Foster whispered. "I'm reading massive quantum activity just ahead." They rounded a corner and found themselves in a huge chamber that took their breath away. The room was the size of a football stadium, its walls covered in what looked like a living computer made of coral and crystal. Lights flowed through the structure in complex patterns, and the air hummed with energy. "There," Foster pointed to the center of the chamber. "That's the quantum communication array." In the middle of the room stood a pillar of organic material that reached from floor to ceiling. It pulsed with light that seemed to respond to signals from all over the galaxy. This was the brain of the Devourer fleet, the central processor that coordinated attacks across multiple star systems. "How do we get to it?" Holmes asked. The pillar was surrounded by a pit filled with what looked like living water. The liquid moved and shifted, occasionally forming shapes that might have been tentacles or arms. There was no obvious way to cross the gap. "I'll have to go down there," Foster said. "The device needs to be attached directly to the quantum array." "That's not happening," Holmes replied firmly. "That pit looks like it's designed to eat intruders." Before Foster could argue, the chamber began to change. The walls started moving and openings appeared around the room. From these openings came the ship's defense system, creatures that looked like giant spiders made of the same organic material as the walls. "Contact," Holmes shouted, raising his weapon. The defense creatures moved fast, scuttling across the walls and ceiling with impossible speed. They were armed with natural weapons, claws that could cut through metal and organs that spat acid. Holmes and his team opened fire with their kinetic weapons. The bullets punched through the creature's organic armor, but more kept coming. These defenders were part of the ship itself, growing new ones to replace those that were destroyed. "Foster, get to that array," Holmes yelled as he shot down another spider creature. "We'll hold them off." Foster ran toward the edge of the pit. The living water below her writhed and reached upward, sensing her presence. She pulled out her quantum device and activated it, hoping it would work from this distance. "It's not close enough," she called out. "I need direct contact with the array." Officer Miller appeared beside her, breathing hard from the fight. "I'll lower you down. Holmes can't spare anyone else." Without waiting for argument, Miller grabbed Foster's safety rope and began lowering her into the pit. The living water reached for Foster as she descended, forming tentacles that tried to grab her legs. Foster kicked at the organic tendrils and stretched toward the quantum array. Her device beeped as it got closer to the alien technology. Finally, she was able to attach it directly to the pillar's surface. "Device attached," she called up. "Activating now." The quantum disruptor began its work immediately. The lights in the array flickered and began to dim. Around the chamber, the spider creatures stopped moving as their coordination signals were cut off. "It's working," Holmes shouted. "The defense systems are shutting down." But their celebration was short-lived. As the quantum array failed, the bioship began to die around them. The walls started to collapse and the bioluminescent lighting began to fade. "Time to go," Holmes ordered. "Foster, get back up here." Miller pulled Foster out of the pit just as the living water began to drain away. The organic computers on the walls were shutting down one by one, their lights going dark forever. The team ran through corridors that were already beginning to decay. Without the quantum signals to maintain them, the bioship's living systems were failing. They reached their entry point just as the ceiling began to sag. "Defiant, we need pickup now," Holmes radioed. Parker's voice came through clearly. "Already on our way. The whole enemy fleet is going crazy out here. They're not coordinating anymore." The boarding party emerged onto the bioship's hull to find chaos all around them. The Devourer fleet was falling apart as individual ships lost contact with their central command. Some bioships were firing on each other, confused without their hive mind to guide them. The Defiant swooped down to collect them, its shuttle bay opening like welcoming arms. As soon as the boarding party was aboard, Parker ordered full speed away from the dying command ship. Behind them, the massive biovessel collapsed in on itself, its organic structure unable to survive without the quantum coordination system. The destruction of their command ship sent shockwaves through the entire Devourer fleet. For the first time in galactic history, the unstoppable swarm was stopped. The bridge of the Defiant erupted in cheers as the massive Devourer command ship collapsed into itself. On the main screen, Captain Parker watched the enemy fleet fall apart like a broken machine. Bioships that had moved with perfect coordination minutes before now drifted aimlessly through space. Their connection to the hive mind severed forever. "Captain," Commander Bennett reported, excitement clear in his voice. "The entire enemy formation is breaking up. They're not responding to each other anymore." Parker nodded, but she kept her eyes on the tactical display. "What about the alien fleet? Are they seeing this?" Lieutenant Torres checked his long-range sensors. "Yes, ma'am. Admiral Zektar's forces stopped their retreat about 10 minutes ago. They're turning around." Through the communication system, Parker could hear radio chatter from the alien ships. The universal translators were working overtime as dozens of different species tried to understand what they were seeing. The mighty Devourer fleet, which had consumed entire star systems, was suddenly helpless. "All ships, this is Admiral Zektar." The Carillion commander's voice came through clearly. "Form attack formation and advance on the enemy. Target the disabled bioships." Parker smiled. Now that the Devourers couldn't fight back effectively, the aliens were brave again. But she didn't blame them. The chance to destroy this threat was too important to waste. "Nash, hold fire," Parker ordered. "Let the alien fleet have their turn." The galactic fleet swept back into the battle zone like an avenging angel. Energy weapons lit up the darkness as thousands of alien ships opened fire on the confused Devourers. Without their hive mind coordination, the bioships couldn't adapt their defenses quickly enough. They fell by the hundreds, then by the thousands. Dr. Foster appeared on the bridge, still wearing her spacesuit but with the helmet removed. Her hair was messy and her face was flushed from the mission, but she was grinning. "Captain, the quantum disruption is spreading through their entire network. Every Devourer ship in this system is affected. They've lost all higher brain functions." "Like cutting the head off a snake," Parker said. "Exactly. The individual ships still have basic functions, but they can't work together anymore. They're just animals now, not a coordinated threat." The battle continued for another hour, but it was really more of a cleanup operation. The alien fleet systematically destroyed every devourer ship they could find. Some bioships tried to flee, but without coordination, they were easy targets for the pursuing alien fighters. Parker watched it all with mixed feelings. She was glad the threat was over, but she couldn't help feeling sorry for the devourers. They had been a terrible enemy, but they were also living creatures in their own way. "Captain," Bennett called out, "we're receiving a priority message from Admiral Zektar." "Put it through." The alien admiral appeared on their main screen. His lizard-like face showed an expression Parker had never seen before, something that might have been respect. "Captain Parker," Zektar said slowly, "the Galactic Council requests your immediate presence. We have much to discuss." 2 days later, Parker found herself back in the Great Chamber on Nexus Prime. But this time, things were very different. Instead of sitting in the back row like an unwanted guest, she had been given a place of honor near the front. The alien representatives who had laughed at humanity's single ship now looked at her with a mixture of awe and curiosity. Captain Morrison was there too, his diplomatic uniform crisp and clean. But now he carried himself differently, with the confidence of someone whose people had proven themselves in the most dramatic way possible. Admiral Zektar stood to address the assembly. "Fellow beings," he began, his voice echoing through the chamber, "we gather today to recognize an unprecedented victory. The Devourer threat, which had consumed 3 star systems and threatened our entire civilization, has been eliminated." Polite applause filled the chamber, but Zektar raised a clawed hand for silence. "However," he continued, "this victory was not achieved by our mighty fleets or our advanced technology. It was accomplished by a single ship from a species we had dismissed as primitive." The chamber fell silent. Parker could feel hundreds of alien eyes focused on her. The human vessel Defiant, crewed by only 60 individuals, succeeded where our combined fleets of thousands had failed. They used weapons we considered outdated and tactics we thought were impossible. Zektar paused, his yellow eyes finding Parker in the crowd. "Captain Parker, would you explain to this assembly how such a thing was possible?" Parker stood slowly. She had prepared for this moment, but it still felt strange to address the most powerful beings in the galaxy. "Thank you, Admiral Zektar," she began. "The answer is simple. We didn't try to match your numbers or copy your technology. We used what humans do best. We adapted." She looked around the chamber, meeting the gaze of alien representatives who had mocked humanity just days before. "Your species have been fighting wars in space for thousands of years. You've developed sophisticated energy weapons and defensive systems, but that sophistication became a weakness when you faced an enemy that could adapt to it. A blue-skinned alien with 6 arms raised one of them. But Captain Parker, your weapons were primitive metal projectiles. How could such simple tools succeed where our advanced energy beams failed?" "Because simple is sometimes better," Parker replied. "The Devourers could adapt their bioarmor to resist energy weapons, but they had never encountered kinetic weapons. By the time they realized what we were doing, it was too late." Another alien, this one resembling a walking tree, spoke up. "Your ship moved in ways that defied our understanding of physics. How did your crew survive such acceleration?" Parker smiled. "Humans evolved on a heavy gravity world. Our bodies are naturally tougher than most species in the galaxy. What would kill your crews only makes us uncomfortable." "And the boarding mission?" asked a creature that looked like a giant insect. "How did 60 humans accomplish what our armies could not?" "We didn't think of it as impossible," Parker said simply. "Humans have a saying, where there's a will, there's a way. When something needs to be done, we find a way to do it." Admiral Zektar stepped forward. "Captain Parker, the Galactic Council has voted unanimously to offer humanity a permanent position in our defense alliance. We would like Earth to take a leading role in protecting our civilization." The chamber erupted in applause. But this time it wasn't mocking laughter. It was the sound of respect earned through action. Morrison stood to respond. "On behalf of Earth and humanity, we accept this honor. But we want to make something clear." He looked around the chamber with calm confidence. "You counted our ships and found us wanting. We counted our advantages and found them sufficient. Humanity doesn't send fleets to fight battles. We send solutions." Later, after the formal ceremonies were over, Parker found herself in a quiet observation lounge looking out at the stars. The Defiant hung in space nearby, small and unremarkable compared to the massive alien vessels around it. Quite a view. said a familiar voice behind her. Parker turned to see Morrison approaching with 2 cups of coffee. Real Earth coffee, somehow obtained in this alien place. "Thank you, sir," Parker said, accepting the cup. "Hard to believe how much has changed in just a few days." Morrison nodded. "The galaxy sees us differently now. No more jokes about primitive humans and their single ship. Do you think it will last?" Parker asked. "Or will they forget once the next crisis comes along?" Morrison sipped his coffee and smiled. "I don't think they'll forget. We've shown them something new, that innovation matters more than imitation, that creativity beats conformity." He gestured toward the Defiant. "That little ship of yours has become a symbol. Other species are already asking for human military advisors. They want to learn our impossible technologies." Parker laughed. "Wait until they find out our impossible technologies are just applied physics and stubborn determination." "The best kind of impossible," Morrison agreed. A week later, Captain Parker, now Admiral Parker, stood on the bridge of the Defiant as it led a mixed fleet of human and alien vessels on patrol through the former Devourer territory. Her ship had been designated as the flagship of the new Galactic Defense Force, with representatives from dozens of species serving under human command. "Admiral," Commander Bennett reported from his station. "All ships are reporting ready for the patrol sweep." "Very good. Take us out, Mr. Torres." As the fleet moved through space, Parker reflected on how much had changed. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the most powerful weapon wasn't the biggest gun or the most advanced technology. Sometimes it was the willingness to think differently, to refuse to accept that something couldn't be done. Humanity had earned its place among the stars not through conquest or superior firepower, but by proving that innovation and determination could overcome any obstacle. The galaxy had laughed at their single ship. They weren't laughing anymore.